All right. In my last video, I talked about what really happens at Conan O'Brien's Christmas parties on a year-to-year basis. I also talked about the idea that these parties are a way for celebrities to be able to unwind, unpack, maybe talk about uh, future projects, movie projects, scripts, ideas, all this kind of stuff, and basically just have fun, get baked, whatever it is. And that's what they do. And they usually do it behind closed doors, as in there's no media there. They don't even want you to know if they were at the party or not at the party because then the paparazzi usually shows up and you don't want that. So I talked about that quite a bit in one of my last videos entitled What Really Happens at Conan O'Brien's Christmas Party. I gotta tell you, this coffee is second to none. Uh, my son bought me an espresso for Christmas as a present. I've never had better coffee. I'm just saying, I've never had better coffee. I would be, I would, if Nespresso said, "Hey, Black Swan, would you like us to sponsor your channel?" I'd be like, "Yeah, for sure. I'll talk about all your coffee." What a great invention. All right. So this video is going to be more focused on what really happens when celebrities are forced to speak and why this could be a deal breaker when it comes to Nick Reiner actually getting off as not guilty. And again, Hollywood's nervous about this. I've been talking about this for the past 2 weeks, presenting arguments for Nick Reiner being found not guilty. And then Alan Jackson came on board, and this guy usually takes cases, and maybe all lawyers do this, where they take on a case when they really feel like they can win. So he took on this case, and I feel like he has a strong case to actually win, because right now everything that has been spoken about Nick Reiner has been hearsay or stories about him when he was like 16, 17, 18 years old, including the idea that he's been in and out of rehab 17 or 18 times. This keeps coming up, keeps coming up. And when you go back in time, you'll see that it was actually Nick Reiner that said, when I had started writing the idea for leaving Charlie, I had worked on it with my friend for about 4 years, and I had already been in and out of rehab 17, 18 times. That's where they're getting this information from, is a Nick Reiner interview with his father. And Nick spent 4 years from basically age 18 to age 22 working on a comedy script, really, a dark satire comedy uh, script for a TV series that he wanted to produce. And after about 4 years, he showed it to his dad, Rob Reiner, and his dad said, um, "This is actually terrible. There's too many jokes, just bang, 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 and there's no emotion that tied to this. I can help you shape the script. I can help you write it, but you need more emotion. You need stories from perhaps when you're in and out of rehab. Is there any stories that you can come up with that would convey some emotion?" And Nick's like, "Yeah, I witnessed a lot of stuff, a lot of good, a lot of bad, people going in and out of rehab. And I can inject those stories into this movie. And Rob was like, well, we need an antagonist, we need the hero, protagonist, all this stuff. So why don't you just make it like a father son? And and then we'll just go and I'll inject some of my experience as well, from not only from the stories that you're telling, but also my experiences growing up as well, and then some of the experiences that I had making movies. We'll put it all together, and we'll use the guy that's forget what the guy's name is, starring in Princess Bride. We'll put him as the father figure because he understands how I work in the movie process, and then we'll go from there. So Nick said, "Yeah, I never really thought about making it into a movie, but that's a great idea, Dad." So they worked on the script for 9 months together, both of them. And uh, Nick said, when I was growing up, and this is what TMZ and all these other people will use against Nick, said, when I was growing up, I didn't really have anything that I can bond with my dad with. Like, I was a Jewish guy and I liked basketball. My dad liked to watch baseball with my brother Jake because they had that interest. And then when I started to write, I found that my dad was interested in what I was doing when I was writing because he loved movies. And I felt, wow, this is something that I can sink my teeth into. And it's something that my dad is passionate about, the movie industry. And I think I actually found my passion because before I was 18, I had no direction. I was like, man, my dad is, he has his thing. He's pretty successful. And he just didn't really have a purpose or an identity, which again, most young men run across that throughout North America. So that's not a surprise. But Nick was admitting this. And then when he started writing, he felt, man, I have a passion now for writing. And I get to work with my dad. And all along, he never really fully appreciated the idea of how big of a deal Rob was in the movie industry. He just treated him as dad. But once he started to work with his dad, he went, wow, this guy really knows his stuff. Like he's really good at it. And through that process, Rob also got to know his son, what he was dealing with, how hard he was on his son because he would send him to all these places. And every time Nick would leave because they were brutal, he would be homeless, as in he didn't have a place to go. So then he'd end up going home. That's where they get this homeless stuff from. Was the second you leave rehab early, you're considered homeless because you're not supposed to go home. You're supposed to be in a rehab. So that qualifies you as homeless. It's not living in the streets. It's you're not at the rehab home and you're not supposed to be at home. And he would do this where there would be 30-day stints. There would be 3-day stints. So if you didn't make it 3 days and you quit after two, that's considered you're now homeless. It's now considered that you're out of rehab. So that's once. So he would be in and out because sometimes he would finish it early or whatever, and he's good. And again, remember, this was all before he was 18 years old. So people today are using his experiences and everything that he shared, injecting some of it into Leaving Charlie. They're using all of that as evidence that this is the reason why Nick murdered his parents, Rob and Michelle Reiner. It's because he was in and out of rehab before he was 18. He was homeless before he was 18. And this is what they're using. Every time he had an interview, they would hang on to that interview and they would say, look at this. He was a ticking time bomb. And what they're doing is they're actually assassinating his character before the trial. They're actually sentencing him before the trial based on things that he said back in 2000 16, 9 years ago, 8 years ago. He's never been arrested, never been convicted of anything, never showed anything about the idea that he hated his parents. Instead, it's the opposite. He was like, man, whenever I'm into my drugs and stuff, I feel shame because my parents are rooting for me and I'm treating them like this. Like I feel horrible about my addiction. And my parents love me. And Rob would go on record saying he loved his son. And what they were doing to him inside those rehab places, not right. He trusted them with their diplomas. Don't think that doesn't raise a bit of an alarm for people that manage those type of facilities when they hear people like Rob Reiner speaking against their trade, saying it doesn't work. Tough love doesn't work. Abusing them in these places doesn't work. And they're using this against Nick and his family now, saying, look, see, because you didn't agree with our tough love, this is why Nick murdered his parents. And it's an attack on the Reiner family from these various institutions. How do I know that? Well, because now you get all these psychologists that are having YouTube channels that are saying, it's because Rob wasn't hard enough on his child. He should have kicked them out. He should have did all this stuff. That's why Nick murdered his parents. And we could see this come, and they're all psychologists. So, and then you get other people that are saying, oh, it's because his meds are changed. It's because he's on meth. That's why he's so calm. That's why he was able to book in at the hotel using a credit card. That's why he cleaned himself off and then booked into a hotel and then later murdered his parents or whatever, or brought blood into the hotel. Like it's weird. It doesn't line up because every close person that knew Nick would go on record saying, I'm confused because that's not the guy I knew that they're portraying in the media as being a cold-blooded, calculated murderer that was on all these, his meds were being changed, he's schizophrenic. They're saying that's not him. I don't know what they're saying, but that doesn't line up with how I knew him. Close sources to the family are saying there was no argument at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party, that was made up. Sources are also saying that Romy never called 911, that she never heard a dying declaration from her mom because she was already dead at the scene. When she arrived, she only saw her father, Rob, dead. When she left the house, fled from the house, her roommate, which I think is her boyfriend, called 911 and said, Rob is dead. So the fire department came, paramedics came, the police came. The fire department went inside and found two people and told Romy that your mom, Michelle, is also dead. That's how she found out about her mom. Now they're saying they died within a minute of each other. That's not proven. That's not true right now. The death certificate said that they put a timestamp of 3:45 for Rob and 3:46 for Michelle. That's not the time of their death. It's the time that they reported them dead. And they had to write it down. So once they write down Rob Reiner, deceased, Michelle becomes a widow. She's a widower. She doesn't have a husband. So then a minute later, after they're done filling out the first death certificate, they write in the second death certificate, Michelle is also deceased by sharp objects by another person. They don't put Nick at all. It's not even mentioned there. And another thing, because Romy didn't call 911, another lie that was being thrown around was that Romy said, you should put him as a suspect. She didn't say that. Sources close to the family said no. She didn't call 911. That's a fact. Her roommate did. So she didn't say Nick was a suspect. Instead, what she said is, my brother also lives in the guest house. Please notify my brother that his parents are murdered. That's it. That's not a conspiracy. That's not a reason to go after Nick. It was to let him know, hey, your mom and dad are dead. So then Sunday night at about 9:30, the police reported that they were not looking for a suspect. That all they're doing is just interviewing the family members. And they have no warrant to search the premises because the rule is, because of your Fourth Amendment in the United States, you're not allowed to go back into the place of residence once you leave. So once the paramedics, the fire department, the police are no longer needed at the home and they leave, they can't turn around and go back in and investigate the bedroom, gather evidence. They can't do that until they get a search warrant. And the coroner wasn't there until at least 10 o'clock at night. They weren't around. So that meant the bodies were left in the exact position from when they found the bodies at like 3:45 p.m. till 10 o'clock at night. Like, they're not moved. So if they were murdered before 3:45 p.m., which most people say they were, that means rigor mortis, all this stuff would have set in. Like, it's a horrible scene. But they can't touch the bodies or anything until the coroner gets there. And by 9:30 Sunday night, the coroners weren't there. And they didn't have a search warrant to go back into the premise until at least the next day. And that's when Nick checked in on Monday morning at 4 o'clock. People are like, why would he check in close? This doesn't make sense. Like, if he's a murderer, he should flee the country. And if he's a murderer, he's avoiding the law and all this stuff. But meanwhile, they didn't have a warrant. They didn't have a suspect. They didn't have a search warrant. None of that stuff. Sunday night. And Nick and Romy and Jake weren't allowed to go back to the house because it's now a crime scene as of Sunday afternoon at 3:45 p.m., meaning Nick needs a place to stay. So instead of booking a hotel room on the opposite side of town, he books one of the closest hotels to where he lived, to where his family lived, so he can be in contact, so he can be in touch with the family, not fleeing, not running. And then Monday night, the LAPD police arrest Nick. So now they have him in custody. And basically Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the rumors are coming out. Romy had a dying declaration from her mom, Michelle, that she reported that Nick was the suspect, that Bill Hader had a problem with Nick at the party, and all the celebrities are now tight-lipped. Because if anyone breaks their silence and Alan Jackson gets wind of it, what's going to happen is you line up one celebrity after another on the stand, and as soon as Bill Hader says, no, I never even saw Nick, or I never had an argument with Nick, now they're going to throw this out. Nick is going to be not guilty, and then they wasted all this time not trying to find out who the real killers were. And if you get another celebrity that says, well, I saw Nick talking to Bill Hader, but I don't know what they said because it's a Christmas party and everybody's talking to everybody. And to be honest, I was a little smashed. Oh, you're smashed? What does that mean, smashed? Well, I took a little bit of drugs. You're high? Yes. Was anyone else around you high that night? Yeah, probably a lot of people. A lot of people had alcohol. A lot of people had weed, and there's probably other stuff tossed around at the party. Oh, okay. So the original story was that Nick was not invited. Is that true? No, actually, this is a private Christmas party that you have to be on the invitation list. You can't just show up. You have to let Conan O'Brien know if you want to bring a guest, and he has to approve it because they have security and because they have catering. They bring in food for according to the number of guests they have. Sometimes these the number of guests could be anywhere from hundreds to thousands of people coming and going at the Christmas party. So you're going to have to check in, you're going to have to verify your name, and you're going to have to check out and say you left the party. And there's going to be surveillance everywhere going to the party and leaving. And we still don't know if Nick left with Rob and Michelle. And I'm leaning on that side because he doesn't drive. He has to catch a ride wherever he goes, or he has to walk. So he showed up at the party with with Rob and Michelle. And also, we're now getting rumors that Tracy was also at the party, that Romy was at the party, and that Jake was at the party, meaning the whole family was there. This is a family that goes to parties. They had a family gathering before, which means Nick, Jake, Romy were there. Nick always goes with his dad. And people say, oh, uh, Rob is just dragging his son because he's trying to keep an eye on him. Really? It kind of sounded like Nick wanted to go wherever his dad was because they were a close family. And you'll see that. Billy Crystal, any of the other celebrities, they're all like, man, this is a shock. The family loved Nick. Nick loved the family. Jake loved the family. Romy loved the family. 2 weeks before, they were on the holidays together. Romy took tons of pictures of their vacation getaway. So none of the celebrities are going to want to be subpoenaed because what happens is if their story doesn't line up with someone else, it's going to get tossed because somebody's lying and they don't want to be the one caught lying because their story's wrong or they made it up or they didn't hear it right. If it gets tossed because of them, they'll never work again in Hollywood. So they're like, you know what? I'd rather not get subpoenaed. So they'll just keep tight-lipped. This is why you don't know who was at the party. And this is why you don't hear from anybody, including Bill Hader. Bill Hader is freaked out right now because all the blame is being put on him and all the blame is put on Conan O'Brien. Bill Hader has been on record for people to say that he is often anxious. He's an anxious guy, paranoid. So it kind of matches the idea that he heard people saying, are you famous? Are you famous? He's paranoid. Conan O'Brien, because he's the outsider here, as in he's never made any famous movies. He's never produced a movie, never directed a movie. All he had is a late night talk show. There's a good chance that Conan O'Brien, because he's considered an outsider from Hollywood, ask any Hollywood personnel, they will say the same thing. Conan O'Brien has the best parties. Beyond that, we don't know who his friends are. Because the joke is inside of Hollywood, that Conan O'Brien doesn't have any Hollywood friends because he's not an insider. He's an outsider. So the only way to overcompensate for that is to throw lavish Christmas parties. And the Hollywood elites know that Conan O'Brien is not really one of them. So if you're going to pin the blame on anyone, make someone take a fall for you, Hollywood is going to blame it on Conan O'Brien. Guaranteed. Conan's going to have to take the front because he's going to get subpoenaed and they're going to ask him. All the celebrities were saying that Nick was a problem. And even celebrities wanted to call 911. This is what sources are saying. Sources say that, Conan, you said not to call 911. So now all the blame for the murder of Nick, murdering Rob and Michelle, could fall upon Conan O'Brien because they're saying that he stopped people from calling 911. Remember, he's an outsider. Not everybody likes Conan O'Brien. Not all the elites, but they'll go to his parties because he has the best food and they'll go there. But they're kind of using him. It's not like he's a heavy movie producer like Rob Reiner and he has a lot of pull. It's basically they're using him for his parties. And that's the running joke in Hollywood. Conan O'Brien throws great parties, but he's an outsider. He has no friends. Not Nick Reiner. Nick Reiner's parents are famous. He wrote a script. He's on the inside. He's a script writer. Once you write one treatment or one movie, you're now a script writer. Just like when you write a book, you are now an author. That's how it happens. So he's on the inside. Conan O'Brien is not. And nobody is talking because they're worried if they talk, Alan Jackson's going to subpoena them. So they're all remaining zipped. Their lips are sealed and they're not talking because there's fear that they're going to have to stand trial, to either defend Nick or to accuse Nick. And they want to be a part of it. I promise you, these celebrities don't want the negative publicity around a murder trial of one of the elites, Rob Reiner and Michelle. They don't want to have to testify and say, Rob's son was crazy. He was yelling at everyone at the party. Because the question is going to be, okay, well, why didn't you call the police? Oh, wow. Conan O'Brien told us not to. They didn't want the police at the party. They didn't want us to call 911. Okay, well, let's put Conan O'Brien. Why didn't you want Nick, or why didn't you want the police to be at your party? Because they're saying Nick was a threat. And if Conan says, well, I didn't think Nick was a threat, he's not guilty. Or if they think, I did think he was a threat, but I let him go anyway, now he could be blamed for allowing a murderer that you knew was going to murder his parents because you heard the argument, you heard the fight, and you did nothing. Right or wrong, this is what Conan O'Brien is going to face. So these are things that we're going to have to think about. This is the things that Hollywood is going to have to deal with as we approach January 7th. And they are tight-lipped, folks. They are not saying anything. These are the most silent canaries in a coal mine. And they could either help Nick's case or break Nick's case, but they're not saying anything because they're worried that they are going to be standing trial. And this trial is going to be one of the biggest trials since O.J. Simpson. I believe it. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in another video. Bye for now. Make sure subscribe, share this video, comment, let me know what you think. See you later. Bye for now.